So I want to share with you the story behind the news. This is an article on Zero Hedge, Wanted, the most in-demand jobs of the next decade. I'm particularly interested in this topic. I was quite involved in career placement when I worked for a university for 8 years. I started a high-tech career fair there for computer science students. And so this is something I've been looking at for a very long time. And then, of course, it's really important to people and their well-being in the future. So it's something I've thought a lot about. So here's the infographic from Statista. And what do you notice about these categories? So the title is Occupations with the Highest Projected Change in Employment in the U.S. between 2022 and 2032. And prognostications are typically far from perfect. But look at these careers and you tell me what you see here. So, unless you're blind, you'll see that quite a bit of these jobs serve older, more wealthy people, and or state-funded versions of the same. So, what we see here between health and human services types jobs, the nurses, the health and personal care aides. That's an interesting home health and personal care. I have close ties with some gentlemen who run a very successful home care business, and these are professional ties. And I ask them questions all the time because I'm quite curious about their work. Their business is exploding, and it has been for a very long time because there's a confluence of several factors here. One is, obviously, there's an aging population who has a disproportionate amount of money, and also their children don't want much to do with them. And also, a growing number of them don't have children. And so between these things, the outlook looks great for home health care. Older people will pay any price to maintain the illusion of their independence. And their children will pay any price to not have to deal with them. That's a very sad cultural shift, but that is what has happened. Younger people today, people in general, don't want to be bothered with the elderly or the young. They just want to live their lives full of hedonism. And so this is obviously going to continue to explode, but you've also got nurses in here. You've got restaurant cooks. Tell me this, as minimum wage keeps going higher, who is going to restaurants anymore? It's certainly not the lower class, and decreasingly, it's fewer and fewer of the middle class. Okay, stockers and order fillers. I'm not sure exactly what's behind this, if this is just order stuff from home industry, or if this is the increasing number of stores that aren't allowing you to browse in their store. There's just a security counter and you put in your order on a tablet or something and then they bring it out to you so you don't shoplift, as I told you would happen. That's happening all over the place. But who's ordering things, right? It's not normal people. Increasingly, it's folks with the money. Same thing, freight, stock, and material movers. I don't know what general and operations managers do. It's probably just the supervisors for those folks. Who knows? Medical and health services managers, again, healthcare, and then light truck drivers, which is again deliveries. So if you take out healthcare, deliveries of stuff, and restaurants, what are you left with? Basically just software developers. Now even that is very different than it's been in the last 10 years. Why? One, the number's way lower. The shortages from the last decade were way higher than that. I know that because, again, of my work. But these kinds of software developers are very different than the ones that were hired in the last decade, because more than 50% of the ones hired in the last decade were not very good. They were just your run-of-the-mill, write the same code every single day developers. With the increase of AI-enriched tools, those jobs are out. And if they're not out already, they will be shortly. What remains, this is always what happens with an increase of technology. There's a split in the jobs. And the majority of the jobs go away. The ones that remain, they tend to get paid a little more, and they're doing way harder work. Way harder work. It's everything the algorithms can't do. And so what you have here is a specter of the present economy, which itself is a specter of the previous economy, which itself is a specter of the previous economy. And we've been through multiple cycles of this since our economy peaked. And there's a debate on when that happened. It was probably in the late 70s. But you could make an argument for later than that. Whatever the case might be, it certainly has been DOA since at least 2008. And everything else has just been an illusion. The fumes of prosperity. Now here's the transition that's happening and what you need to understand. In the past, you could make good money being a nurse. Increasingly, if you just ignore the increased overhead of, for example, having to get potentially life-altering or ending experimental procedures done in order to keep your job, increasingly, to make good money as a nurse, you need to migrate towards non-standard nurse jobs like traveling nurses can make a fortune right now. Well, the same goes for all other healthcare jobs. It's not what it used to be. There are increased costs of malpractice insurance. There is a ridiculously higher barrier to get into the job, especially if you're a white male. There are enormous discounts given on MCAT entrance exam standards for people who are not white males. And you might not know that. You should look into it. It's quite scary, which means it's almost impossible to get into it if you are a white male. Okay. And the quality of, which this isn't directly related, it's more related to the test scores than anything else about the demographic shift. The quality of those doctors is going down, which means malpractice claims go up, which means malpractice insurance goes up, and on and on and on. Plus just the complexity of everything else spiraling out of control continues to do the same to the price. The point is, you're getting less for more. And this is the theme across the board. So people in these jobs will still make less money than they do today, by and large, right? Because of inflation and all these other factors. And who will these people be providing services to? This is the new economy. And what is it? It's serving the wealthy. It's serving the wealthy. Historically, let me just draw this in crayon for you. Historically, you could get a decent middle-class job if you were willing to do what it took to get the job, training-wise and whatever. It wasn't all that hard, right? But you could do it, and a lot of people did. And you could go and you could lay some brick and make enough money to support a whole family. You could go and be a nurse and make enough money to support a whole family. You could go and be a developer and live very comfortably, even with a large family. All of that, the window is closing because at this point, and more with every passing day, you're not adding value to the economy. You're just taking a little bit of what's left. It's a shrinking pile. We are living in a post-prosperity world. You really need to understand that everything you think of when you think of the way things really are is probably a direct result of the cheap energy that comes from fossil fuels. And as those diminish, whether it's naturally because it's a limited resource or unnaturally because people are accelerating that shift through forcing folks to close down coal-fired powered plants, to artificially increase the price of oil by not permitting new exploration and drilling operations and things like that, or just adding taxes. The fact is that bubble is going away. It's happening very quickly. And your life is going to be fundamentally different than everything that came before for all of living memory. What I mean by that is the way of life that you think of when you think of modern life, that is just a bubble. And it's lasted just a couple of generations. And it's done. And here is one piece of evidence in the news today. And this is a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes as to why this is and how it's going to affect you. Instead of having this comfortable middle-class life, your life is going to migrate more and more towards being a servant of wealthy people. because they're the ones that have the money. And unlike previous times when that shifted to the next generation over time, it's not shifting anywhere. Maybe some of it will go to their kids, but they're going to spend most of it because it's going to take more of it to maintain that independence that they're willing. It's an illusory independence. It's an illusion that they're willing to pay any price to sustain. They don't care. They can't take it with them, so they're going to burn it if that's what it takes to eke out just a couple more days of feeling like someone else can't tell them how to live their lives. And they can still drive. And they can still do this and that. Okay? That's your crystal ball for what's coming. So prepare accordingly.